Well, hey everyone, welcome to episode 3 of the Habits of the Home Advent podcast. We're here in your home.
In my home.
Thank you so much
Welcome.
thank you so much for having us up here
Don't
today.
act like you're not here all the time.
I know. I'm part of the furniture here. The past 2 episodes, we have, I guess, unpacked this book together. We've talked through the shape of this book and also the daily rhythm of it. But today we want to, I guess, widen the scope a little bit of the conversation to talk a little bit about the atmosphere around using this book in our homes as we build this rhythm of blessing each other in the mornings, of having time together for scripture and prayer and liturgy and lighting candles, and then also blessing each other as we go to bed. But we wanted to talk a little bit more about the atmosphere that we're wanting to create. So, Dana, whenever you think about Advent, whenever you think about leading your family alongside Andy in this home, this Advent, what kind of atmosphere are you guys wanting to create for your kids and also for yourselves?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Before I answer that, though, I was curious to ask you, how is Advent going for you? Like, you've been doing the liturgy, the readings. How's it going?
It's going okay.
Yeah?
Doing this with, so Eliza turns 4 months old tomorrow.
Yeah.
So trying to do anything in the context of a home with a 4-month-old kid is interesting.
Yeah.
We are trying our best, and we are loving the morning and the evening blessings. This is where we're able to say good morning to each other and bless each other. And we have on most days been able to take some time to light a candle, to say the liturgy, to read scripture together. For me, the most significant moments though have been the moments at the end of the time together, whenever we're just able to pray for each other, just lay on hands and pray for each other. So I think I've really appreciated just that moment in our day, even though it is pretty chaotic and it's way more rushed than we would hope it would be. But we've really enjoyed just taking time to be able to do that. What about for you guys in here?
Yeah, well, okay. Chaotic.
Sure.
But I had a little sort of thought that if I wake the children up and do it like first thing, they're still very sleepy. So they're very calm.
So it's much more chill.
That's it. But the way that I get them out of the bed is I say that they can have a chocolate from the Advent calendar after we have finished.
Nice.
So there's a little bit of a, I don't know, is that bribery? I just like to think of it as a payoff.
Yeah.
Like a,
100%.
a fun thing. But do you know it's been really good? I'm just back from Estonia, of all places.
Yeah.
So it's kind of gutted to be leaving so early in Advent before we really set the rhythm.
Sure.
But something really sweet happened. The kids phoned me and we did it over FaceTime.
Amazing.
And I was in my hotel room with my Advent book and we did it. And they're really enjoying sort of greeting each other with the morning blessing.
Oh, brilliant.
And they've decided that they have to be touching each other when they say it. So it's really...
That's really sweet.
It's really cute. But yeah, do you know what? It's really good. It was like clunky.
Yeah.
Before, like we're learning like how to say it, the rhythm. Absolutely. And every time we do it, it gets a little less clunky. So I guess I kind of wanted to encourage people, anybody who was like, wait a minute, this doesn't look like I thought it was going to look like in my head, just to give it a bit of time and
totally
give yourself a bit of grace.
I think that's the thing of this is a habit that we're wanting to repeat over and over again. And the more that you repeat it, the more you'll get used to it and the more it'll just flow naturally. So
absolutely.
It's really good. So talk to us about the atmosphere that you're wanting to create in your home.
Yeah.
This Advent.
I mean, one of the things that I've learned this past year that actually Andrew sort of, don't tell him, but I learned it from him. Sure. I don't ever tell him these things.
All right. Not that we're recording this or anything.
No, he'll not hear it. No, I'm just kidding. Is to ask myself, what's my end goal here?
Sure.
And it's a really important question to ask yourself because it helps you decide how to go about doing something and what's important and what's not important. You know, what are the hills you're going to die on and what are you going to let go? And so for me, that idea of like, what am I trying to accomplish in my home this Advent? And is it a realistic goal? Right. Sure. You know? There's some things that I want to happen that maybe might be better when my kids are teenagers or whatever. So for me, and I'm simplifying it, I want peace in my home. That isn't the same thing as quiet.
Sure.
But I want peace in my home.
Sure.
And I want to really just sort of cultivate that sense of togetherness. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that togetherness is marked with, I like you, I want to be around you. And so for me, setting the atmosphere begins with very simple things. I have to remind myself about kindness, actually.
Sure.
I am not great in the mornings. We talked about this. And so I get up a little bit earlier than everybody else so that I can have a moment
Right.
to find myself. And I don't like getting up early, by the way. Like this isn't like I'm a morning person.
Yeah.
I'm getting up earlier because I'm not a morning person. And I'm giving myself a little bit of time to have a little chat to myself.
Yeah.
And setting my intention on being kind to myself and to everybody in the family. But there are other things that sort of help me to set the atmosphere in my home. I used to say I'm one of those humans that is very affected by their external space. And now I think that's just actually just being human.
100%.
I think we all are. I don't think we're all aware how affected we are by our external world. But we all absolutely are.
Yeah.
You know, it's funny to me, there was like this meme going around on wherever memes go around on, where this guy's just living his regular life, and then the first couple of bars of Mariah Carey's "I Don't Want a Lot for Christmas" or "All I Want for Christmas" comes on, and his whole demeanor changes. The next time you see him, he's completely in like a Santa outfit, you know? And I'm like, that's the power of the external.
Absolutely.
Like just hearing something or smelling something or seeing something or feeling something.
Yes.
It will sort of cue your inner world.
Right.
Like there's something different happening right now, right? So yeah, for me, that moment that I start to decorate the house, that I put up the tree, that I start lighting my candles. I don't just light candles for Advent. I light them all throughout winter.
Sure.
And I light them in the morning when I get up. There's just something about setting that atmosphere that cues my internal self to say, we're going to slow down.
Yeah.
We're going to really take this in.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty serious about those things. Music is the other thing.
Right.
It's kind of obvious for me because I am a musician, but I think everybody, you don't have to be good at music to be affected by it in the same exact way. I think everybody is probably as affected by music as I am.
Absolutely.
What kind of music? Now that's different. But I mean, you love, you're not a musician,
Nope,
but
definitely not.
You'd be hard pressed to find someone who loves music more than you do. So you know exactly what I'm talking about.
For me, music, a life without music would be really sad, you know? And I think I love listening to music. I love, there's a bit of a joke that goes around about my love of making a playlist.
Oh, you love a wee playlist.
It's like making a mixtape for people. Like, I just love it. For me, you know the way I think a doctor dreams of being on a flight and then somebody gets sick and they're like, hey, is there a doctor? I think I have this sort of dream that somebody just screams out, does anybody have a playlist? And I'm able to respond, be like, yeah, I got one, and then just play it. So I do love, I love music. I love making playlists. I love, particularly because I love setting the atmosphere in my home. So if, for instance, you know, Emma and I are chilling at home and then like the music that you choose in that moment is really important.
Really important.
There's no point putting on like a big drum and bass track or whatever. No. Like you want to play something that's super chill. And so I do think you need to be intentional about that. And Absolutely. I do love that. And for me, this season, the music of the season is just so rich.
Yeah.
And for me personally, I love Advent and the music that we get to listen to because it draws me to music that I wouldn't normally listen to throughout the year. Like I love gathering together with our community every Sunday to sing hymns, to sing worship songs, but you wouldn't find me driving in my car listening to that kind of music. However, whenever it comes to this time of year, like I love listening to ancient hymns, to carols, just because they're so rich. I don't think that there is a greater song than O Holy Night. So I love listening to stuff like that. I also do believe that the opening bars. Is that the right word
Yeah.
for Nat King Cole's The Christmas Song? For me, that's my Mariah Carey moment. That is right. Okay, it is now Christmas time.
I thought about you. I was in Helsinki airport, and that came on.
Come on.
And I was like, Stu loves the song.
I love that song. And there is, so for me, whenever it comes to this time of year, you know, in our home, you will have the Charlie Brown Christmas album being played. You will have Ella Fitzgerald's Ella Wishes You a Swinging Christmas. Like that kind of stuff for me just helps set the atmosphere, which it's just, I just think it's so important.
I think it's really cool to hear you talk about your passion for music and playlists, because we did make playlists for people to go along with this Advent book. And sometimes I think people think, oh okay, you know. But it actually is a super important thing. We did it because we want to help people set the atmosphere in their homes. And so you have 4 different playlists, actually.
Yeah.
One of them is called Expectation, which has become the one I listen to first thing in the morning. I put that on when I'm having my Dana, be a nice person today moment.
Before the kids get it.
Absolutely. And then it switches to your worship playlist when the kids are up and we're all in here, you know. And so I just think that it's important when we talk about setting atmosphere in our home, not to walk past those obvious things.
Right.
Because the atmosphere in your heart is directly affected by your external atmosphere. It just really is.
Absolutely.
You know, there's no arguing about it. So you might as well go ahead and light a candle and put on a good playlist. And I do believe that your internal world follows your external world.
To talk a little bit more about music, because I know that you guys with your kids have been on a bit of a journey around hymns in recent years. Absolutely. So Andy and I would talk about this often, whereas people who teach the Bible and preach on Sundays, people enjoy our talks, but in 20 years' time, they'll not remember anything that we would have said. Never mind, well, maybe even 20 minutes later, they won't really remember what we said. But that it's really different whenever it comes to worship music, and particularly with rich, deep hymns.
Absolutely.
Where the songs that I would have sung as a kid, I still find myself repeating over and over again. And there's something about whether it is, you know, Come Thou Fount of Every Blessing, or Amazing Grace, or Be Thou My Vision, or whatever, that those kind of songs, they stick with you. And and there's something about music that forms us. Probably more than most things.
I think so, Stuart. I really do. Well, we have been on a journey about this, and I'm at a place right now, and I'm still unpacking this, but I truly believe that music is one of heaven's loudest messengers, right? When I was growing up, we were taught all about our history as Black Americans. And one of the things that I loved about that story was our relationship to music. Yeah. And the old, as they call them, Negro spirituals, were actually these, the closest things we had to hymns. Right. That were used in worship, but also used to pass messages on, to let people know when was a good time to escape, what road to take, you know, what time we were meeting, and all that good stuff. Wow. And when you think about like the history of music and how powerful it has been in those types of situations, you realize that it's not just a song. Yes. Do you know what I mean? Yes. And so for me, the journey we've been on with our kids for the past few years is, I mentioned it a couple episodes ago, our relationship to hymns. Mm-hmm. And I do love our modern worship music, and it definitely has its place in our home, and there's some of my favorite songs and whatever. But there's something about passing on theology to our children through music. Absolutely. That is really powerful. Yes. I was just reminded of a hymn I got to sing with Kristen Getty, "Oh Love That Will Not Let Me Go." And I was listening to the lyrics again, and one of the lines, "Oh light that seekest me through pain." Like this idea that the guy who wrote this was actually in a lot of pain. He struggled with depression his whole life. and his mental health wasn't great. And he wrote this song, "Oh Love That Will Not Let Me Go."
Right.
And you realize that these are powerful things that if you can teach them to your children, they will show up later in life when they need them.
Yes.
And so if if your heart is to teach your children about the story of God, that in his immense love for us, that he would disrobe of his deity and come and plant himself in the womb of a young woman, young girl, and come to us as the most helpless of the most helpless point in the human story, as a baby.
Yes.
And you're just like, I want my kids to understand that. Then don't just teach them the "All I Want for Christmas Is You."
Yeah.
Teach them the Silent Night.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Teach them those old, ancient Christmas hymns that tell the story. And what's really great about hymns is that a lot of them were traditionally written by theologians.
Absolutely.
And so, which is very different now from how our worship music is written. Like, the theologian isn't necessarily the worship leader anymore.
Yes.
But there was a time when the theologian was the hymn writer.
Absolutely.
And so that's why those songs are so packed with truth, and they're packed with scripture.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? Absolutely. And so it's a wonderful way. We talk about having our families interact with the Word of God every day. It's actually a wonderful way to have that happen. I was thinking, and I have a question for you. You're in a new season in life. You're a new dad.
Yeah.
You've been doing this way of life for a long time, but now I feel like you're probably rediscovering it in a new way.
Yeah.
What does it mean for you and for Emma to set the atmosphere of Advent in your home? What are you discovering new ways? What does that mean for you?
For us, well, what's been really interesting over the past couple of weeks since we have put our tree up, we've been lighting the fire more often. The thing about having a newborn is that life is hectic, but also life is also quite simple and slow. And we, in and around this time, normally or previously, our schedules would have been packed out with hanging out with lots of friends, hanging out with family, doing lots of things, going out a lot. Whereas actually, there's something about this season that we find ourselves in where it does feel quite simple and slow.
Yeah.
We find ourselves in our living room a lot with the fire lit, listening to music, and we're really enjoying that.
Yeah.
We're really enjoying slowing down.
Yeah.
And there's something, and also enjoying being in our home.
Yeah.
Where for, Emma and I, we work hard. Life is pretty full quite often. And so often home can just be the place that you just come and like you grab some food, you then bounce out of, you're on your way to work. And instead we are settling into our home a lot more, and Eliza is really helping us with that of actually, no, we need to be here. And so we're really enjoying the slightly slower pace to this. It's much more simple. And just enjoying being in our home with the simple things of the fire being lit, with music being on, with a couple of candles, and with us, well, and also the sound of white noise, which is just,
Oh, I know all about the white
like
noise.
on all the time. I don't even notice it anymore. There might be white noise on right now. I've become numb to it. But for us, I think there's something about, we're just enjoying being here. And I was thinking about this last night, actually, where we have found ourselves pretty much in our front room, fire lit, but we're also looking ahead to, okay, what's spring going to look like? And then what's summer going to look like? Summer will be the complete opposite. We spend most of our summers at the back of our house, kind of in and around our conservatory garden space. Lots of light flooding through. And I hadn't been in that room for weeks. And then I was in last night to get something. But I'm also really looking forward to then being out there a lot more in the summertime. And I think I'm beginning to really appreciate the seasons a lot more. And I think for me to be able to lean right the way into what Advent and Christmas offers us, to then be able to really lean into what summer and spring then offers us. So I'm really enjoying that part of it. And I think also for us though, there is that thing of, while, and we talked about this in previous episodes, but it's important to mention again that while we're doing this with Eliza, who really probably doesn't know an awful lot of what's going on, there's something of us looking at her and imagining what this will look like for her in her future.
Yeah.
And Emma and I are really, well, we're trying to really prioritize that at the moment. And that's what a lot of our prayers are about for her,
Yeah.
around what God is doing in her that will set her up for the future.
Absolutely.
And so there is a thing of us leaning into Advent being a time of waiting, it being a time of us slowing down a little bit more, and for us also looking ahead full of hope for the future, which I think is what this season is all about. For me, there's a line from Dietrich Bonhoeffer where he says, "For the greatest, most profound, tenderest things in the world, we must wait. It happens not here in a storm, but according to the divine laws of sprouting, growing, and becoming." And there's something about, even though Advent does feel slower, it feels more reflective. That, I think, is what it is all about for us. And I think particularly for those of you who are raising kids that are maybe slightly older, maybe kids that are around your age, there is something about this season that it may feel slower, it might feel a wee bit weird and a little bit clunky, but actually helping them see that learning to wait for things is really important.
So
we live in an age, you and Andy talked about this a couple of weeks ago in church, where we live in an age that is dominated by just one click and then you're able to get your parcel pretty much the next day. And maybe it's because I'm a kid that grew up with dial-up, or, you know, having to illegally download songs. You know, that took 45 minutes to be able to download one track, and now kids are just able to put on Spotify and they have it in an instant. There's something about us teaching our kids that actually for the most important things, you need to wait. And that's what life is all about. And this season offers us the opportunity to be able to do that.
Absolutely. While you were talking, you're right. One of my most special Christmases was Noah was born in November. And so obviously Christmas came shortly after. And the one thing I remember about that season in my life is how quiet and still it was. And I wasn't doing Advent at that time, but it felt very Adventy. I always tell families who've just had their first child, like, do not skip past this part. Don't always be out in these streets. Enjoy that sort of hunkering down and that quiet part. And there's a few families in our church who have just recently had babies. And so it's probably the wintertime is the easiest season to enjoy that. And so to really lean into that. And I was thinking, like, there's different parts of the story of the coming of Christ, the coming of the Christ child that we're all going to relate to. And so for you and Emma, as you're nursing and sitting in quiet, you'll think to yourself, what was this kind of like what it was like for Mary and Joseph as they held Jesus? And then for the family like ours, it's a bit more chaotic. I often think of, we think of the story so peaceful and quiet all the time. But there were some animals making noises and doing all sorts of other things, and smells, and people in the house were probably yelling, and you know, we have made it kind of like this sort of gorgeous, lovely, perfect scene, but the scene was probably actually far more chaotic than we think. And so if you're in a chaotic stage in your family, you just embrace that you're in that part of the nativity story, the unexpected, the interruptions, the what you thought it was going to be. I don't believe that Mary thought she was going to give birth where she gave birth. I don't know 100%. If that was the plan, you know. I think of the families who have teenagers and maybe staring in the face of these teenagers going out into the world and, you know, the unknown. And you just think Mary and Joseph, they probably thought constantly, what was going to happen after this manger? Like, where were we going? How are we going to do? They had a lot of open-ended questions, a lot of things, the unknown. And so I just love this idea that we all need to do the work of finding where we are in this story and really hold on to that. If you're not in the quiet, I mean, I'm thinking about you guys sitting in that house with this baby, smells so good, and coos and laughs, and I'm like, oh, to go back, but actually that's not where I'm in the chaos of the manger. That's where I am. Um, we're talking a lot about sort of the atmosphere of the home itself,
Yeah.
which we need to talk about.
Yeah.
Because that's important, but only because it leads to the atmosphere of our actual hearts.
Yeah.
And I find Andrew and I find ourselves a lot following your lead, and because you've done a lot of work on how to create a good atmosphere in your heart. Talk to me about what can we do to sort of guard the atmosphere. Okay, we've set the atmosphere. We've started the journey through, putting up the tree, lighting the candles, putting on the right music.
Yeah.
How do we guard the atmosphere of our hearts? And listen, we live in the world we live in.
Yeah.
It's insane.
Yeah.
There's no point complaining about it, but the reality is, it is a lot of times in direct opposition to what we would like the attitude of our hearts to be. How do we guard that this Advent and just in life in general?
Well, I think you've said something really helpful already, which is not being a morning person, having that moment for yourself to be able to, I guess, wake up in terms of your whole being and to take some time to pray before you then go and bless other people. I think that's a really important piece of the puzzle, particularly whenever it comes to the atmosphere of our hearts. Because the danger is that just because of normal life, but particularly in the lead into Christmas, everything gets super busy.
Yeah.
And there's a hurriedness that can take over our souls, and that just dominates everything.
Absolutely.
And busyness is the enemy of spirituality. And life can be full and chaotic and all of that, but there's a busyness to the soul that it does violence to ourselves. It kind of wrecks everything. And I think we need to recognize that, well, we just need to slow down a little bit. Thomas Merton has this phrase that he uses whenever he says that we live in the time of no room. And he says that there is no room for nature, there's no room for quiet, there's no room for solitude, there's no room for thought, there's no room for attention. And I do think that we need to make the most of this time in helping ourselves slow down a little bit. Yeah. And I know that there is, parties for hosting, and there are friends to see and all of that. But I do think that for all of us, there is an excuse that we have to be able to get into our homes, to be able to slow down a little bit because of Advent. And that may mean that we may need to say no to a couple of things. But I think for ourselves, for our souls, but also for the people that we love and people that we do community with, for us to be able to approach them not in a hurried way, but in a way that is much more present. I do think that we just need to be able to kind of pull back on a couple of things and find those moments in our day, like you're getting up that little bit earlier in the morning, just to be able to slow down a little bit. I just think is really, really important. I also do think, though, that there is something that Advent offers us the opportunity to experience, which is a sense of readiness. And I think the danger of Christmas is that it's just one big nostalgia trip. It's us trying to recreate nostalgic moments from the past. That is what Mariah Carey's All I Want for Christmas Is You is all about. It kind of takes us back to a previous experience or to a memory that we had. And yet there's something about this season, and particularly the atmosphere of our hearts, where we, I guess, are hoping for our kids and for our families that they come with a sense of expectation that God would do something new in this moment. And I think if all we do is just consume the same things that we have always done or rehearse the same things that we've always done, we will just end up with the same results. Or maybe something goes wrong and then we're like, oh my goodness, Christmas is ruined. But instead, if we in our hearts have this sense of readiness that actually maybe God might do something new in this moment. He might do something new this Advent. He might do something new this Christmas time. I think we will get to experience him in a new way. And that's what these practices are all about, is us putting new things in place so that we'll be able to experience God in a new way.
Absolutely.
And so I think if whatever you need to do to be able to slow things down a little bit, to prepare your heart slightly differently, but also to create a sense of expectation that God might do something new. I just think that's what's really important whenever it comes to this season.
That's really good.
I want to ask you a question as we begin to wrap this up. And you mentioned this at the very start, that even though your home might be noisy and a little bit chaotic, the thing that you long for is for your family to experience peace. What do you mean whenever you say that? What does peace look like or feel like in your imagination or in the atmosphere of your home?
Yeah. One of my dreams for my family is that in years to come, when the children are adults, that we don't just love each other, we like each other.
Yeah.
And in order for that to happen, I think what that means is that people have to feel loved and accepted.
Yeah.
And there's got to be, as little as possible, there's got to be a minimum of like that passive aggressive thing or sort of the unspoken and the things we don't talk about.
Sure.
And so what I mean by peace is that thing that happens when there's nothing between you.
Right.
And so sometimes peace looks like honest conflict resolution.
Yeah.
Sometimes peace looks like mommy and daddy having to apologize or acknowledge a harsh word spoken. Sometimes peace looks like letting something go.
Yeah.
Even when someone has sort of broken a big rule or something, showing mercy, showing grace. Sometimes peace is calling somebody on something and going, yeah, that's not okay. I wouldn't let anyone do that to you, so I'm not going to let you. But for me, what it means is nothing between us.
Yeah, it's good.
Because I want my home to be a place where my kids feel like their souls can rest.
Yes.
And I think we all know what it feels like to go someplace and feel like you have to put on all the armor before you go in because it's tricky.
Yeah.
And those places will always exist in life. I don't want my home to be one of those places for my children.
That's really good.
And so I think sometimes we conflate peace with quiet.
Yeah.
We conflate peace with no conflict.
Yes.
But for me, there's nothing between us that's eating away at our relationship. And everyone has space to say what they need to say. That's really important to me. That's really important to me. And it's something that I feel like, for me, Advent is one of those times where you recommit to a way of living.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? Like you rediscover what you actually want to be doing.
Yes.
Like your family values almost. For some reason, it's so easy to dream of the family you want to build at times like these.
Right.
You know? And that's just really important to me. I wanted to say something before we wrapped up because something you said really, it just reminded me that this time of year can be really stressful financially for a lot of families.
Yeah.
And it's not like keeping up with the Joneses stressful. It's that you, as parents, I think you do feel this and that I want to make it magical for them.
Sure.
Like, these are the things that they want and I want to make it magical.
Yeah.
And I just had this thought the other day for myself that the cool thing about being people of faith is we don't have to make magic. The magic is already here.
It's really good.
It's us helping them to discover it.
Yes.
And in our family, we're very upfront with our kids. Can I get a new BMX mountain bike? I don't even know if that's a thing, but those phrases were spoken kind of in the same sentence. And we'll say things like, no, that's not on the list of priorities, or it's not in the budget, or here's your budget, here's what we're looking at. Yeah. And that's okay. Yeah. You know, and it is okay to let your kids know that there's a limit to gift giving.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
There's a limit and there's nothing wrong with your limit. It's actually a wonderful learning thing for them in life, you 100%. Know. It'll help them stay between the rails when they have to have a budget. It'll 100%. Help set their expectations, and also to help us all make Christmas a little bit bigger than the gifts we get.
100%.
You know?
I just think that's so important. Whenever I think of Advent, I always think of a line from Karl Barth whenever he says, "What other time or season will the church ever have than that of Advent?" We find ourselves caught in the tension between the first arrival of Christ and the second arrival of Christ. And there's something about this season that trains us for what it looks like to be the people of God in every single moment of our lives. It is a preparation moment, it's a training moment, it's a training season. And I think as we wrap this up, I think it's important for us just to highlight what we have been talking about, which is whether it is the practical things or the much deeper things within ourselves, the atmosphere of our home or the atmosphere of our heart. What we have been talking about is that you just need to be really intentional.
Yeah.
All of this comes down to intentionality, and we've talked about this whenever it comes to this book and the rhythm that we put in place. It is an intentional rhythm, but we would really encourage you as you listen to this conversation to also consider, as we put these prayers, these blessings, these candle lighting moments into practice, to also be intentional about the atmosphere of your heart.
Yeah.
What does it look like to be unhurried, to slow down, to practice the way of peace? But also, what does it look like for you to be really intentional about the atmosphere of your home, and also to have a lot of fun with that with your kids, of what music are we going to play, or what does it look like to decorate the tree, or what are we going to do whenever it comes to just inviting people into our home and into this space. It all comes down to intentionality.
Yeah.
In the next episode, we're going to, I guess, wrap up our conversation by looking at the feasting that we get to look forward to whenever it comes to Christmas time. So can I encourage you, if you want to follow along with this conversation, do check out the Habits of the Home webpage on our website, laganvalleyvineyard.com/habits. There are still some of the books available in our venue or in our church office, so please do grab them. But Dana, thank you so much for today. Grace and peace to all of you and to your home.